Welcome to Fly on the Wall podcast. I'm your host, Chris Sonksen, CEO and founder of Church Boom. Here you get to sit in on a live coaching session as I coach pastors through the ministry challenges we all face. If you find this podcast helpful, please make sure to like, subscribe, and share. Hey everyone, welcome to today's podcast. We are talking with my buddy Ryan. He pastors a great church, and we're talking about the subject of how to keep momentum. Momentum is something we all want, but how do you keep it? How do you sustain it? And then what do you have to watch out for when you gain momentum in the church? It is a great conversation. I know you're going to love it. Before we jump into it, don't forget to check out churchboom.org. We have so many things to offer there for pastors and leaders, a lot of resources there, things that you can check out. So make sure to check out churchboom.org. But let's jump into it now with a great conversation with my buddy Ryan. Hey, let's jump into our coaching call today, man. How can I help you today? How can I serve you?
All right. My main question for today is just like I would share a little bit earlier where we're at kind of attendance wise. And our biggest thing is, man, we have momentum right now. And I want to know what's the biggest thing to keep in momentum?
Yeah, well, that's a wide open question there. Momentum, well, first of all, a couple things. I think it's important to know about momentum. We all want momentum. There's no doubt about that. But the thing about momentum that's interesting is, before we answer how to keep it, is remember momentum is the great exaggerator. Momentum gives us the feeling that we're better than we really are. And you want to be careful with that. Sometimes guys get momentum and they're not working on things they need to be working on. And once that momentum doesn't seem to be happening anymore, they can't seem to get moving again because it's the great exaggerator. It makes us feel like we're better than we really are. Secondly, about momentum is has a way of hiding weakness. Momentum hides weakness. So it causes us to hide the weakness that we don't have strategy, or we don't have systems, or we don't have leadership in place. We don't have the volunteer. We don't have the culture we're going for. We don't fill in the blank. We don't have whatever, because it hides. It's the great exaggerator and hides weakness. Now, as it pertains to just momentum in general, one of the greatest ways that you can keep momentum is you have to keep celebration and life change stories in front of people. If you don't keep celebrations and life change stories in front of people, you're going to have a hard time keeping some of that momentum going and some of that energy going. Always remember that, your volunteers, I always say your volunteers don't get paid with money, they get paid with fruit. And fruit is stories. Fruit is hearing about the life change. Fruit is hearing about the good things God's doing. Fruit is hearing about the marriage that came back together, or the person that got saved or baptized. We've got to pay them fruit. And although fruit may be happening in your church, if your leaders and volunteers are not exposed to all the fruit that's happening in your church, you're not telling them the stories, or the stories aren't getting to them, then what happens is it's like working and not getting paid. You're not going to do that forever. You ultimately want to get paid. And we don't get paid as volunteers with money. We get paid with fruit. But if we as leaders don't put the fruit in front of them, they don't know that something good is happening. That's one of the biggest ways of keeping momentum. So it's important to know that it's a great exaggerator. Momentum hides weakness. No question about that. And that's big. Don't lose that. Your team needs to know that. It's only hiding weakness. Secondly is to the side of creating momentum. One of that is stories and keeping celebration in front of people, as we talked about. You got to tell stories. You got to keep celebration in front of people. You gotta have a rhythm for that. Like, hey, we do it every Sunday at the huddle, but then every Wednesday or Thursday, they all get a 90-second video from me telling them some great story. Like, there's got to be some rhythm to keeping stories in front of people and celebrations in front of people. Figure out the rhythm, because you hear it all the time. They only hear it if you tell them.
Okay.
And you got to keep that excitement in front of them as momentum picks up, because I know what's happened in your church. We've been working together, and you've been part of our church boom, and we've saw God over the last couple of years go from 8 to 120 yesterday, I think is what you were saying, something like that. That is extraordinary growth. God's doing awesome things. Now, understand every new level of growth requires a new change.
Mhm.
So, kind of this concept here, Ryan, is what got you to 100 won't get you to 200 or 300. What got you to 300 won't get you to five. What got you to five won't get you to 1,000. It doesn't mean everything has to change, but it does mean that, man, maybe there's tweaking in the strategy. Maybe there's more depth of leadership we need to create. We need to have a leadership pathway. Maybe there's a volunteer culture that needs to change. Something's got to change. Every new level of growth, not from like 100 to 110, but like from 100 to 300, 300 to 500, 500 to 1,000, 1,000 to 2,500. Like there's change along the way that has to happen. And you have to keep that in mind. Otherwise, you end up losing momentum. And so you don't want to lose momentum because you'll end up, it's the bell curve. You'll end up going like this and flattening out really quick. And you don't want to flatten out. So those are just some thoughts on momentum. I don't know if that's helpful, but yeah, those are some thoughts for you on momentum.
So when you're talking about like exaggerating weaknesses, that's kind of where maybe like when people just see the numbers increase, they automatically assume we're doing great. Is that kind of what you're thinking?
Yeah, it has a way, even for the pastor, it has a way to blind spot him a little bit. So blind spot him a little bit, meaning, um, and the people as well, the leadership, the team. It has a way of like hiding, like, man, we're doing great. Yeah, but man, the follow up is horrible, or we're not really developing leaders, or we're not really developing volunteers, or we're not developing disciples. We're not developing generosity. Like, there's so many things that we're not developing in the life of the church because it hides the weakness. It's just it's growing, and it's like the company that grows too fast. You know,
Okay.
all of a sudden they're like, I don't know, say you're making widgets and you're selling 1,000 widgets a day, and you guys are cranking. And all of a sudden it goes to 3,000, then to 5,000, to 8,000, and all of a sudden you realize we don't have any productivity lines. We don't have a way to ship this many widgets. We don't have a way to correct the problem. We don't have quality control. We were running 100 and that was easy. But now that we're doing 1,000 or 5,000 a day, it's like, whoa, it exposes like, whoa, we're not as good as we thought. And it's kind of like baseball. My son played baseball all the way through college. And when he was on like a travel team or like a certain team, and they would play in the city or in the area or within reason, it was like, man, they were good, they were untouchable, they were amazing. It's like nothing to work on. Why work on it? We always win. And then they go to another state and they get slaughtered, and they realize, wow, we're not as good as we thought we were. Because now all of a sudden you're exposed to trying to climb to a higher level, and you realize we're not as good as we thought we were. That is not a problem just at a church of 100. That's a problem with a church of 1,000 or 3,000. We're not as good as we thought we were. And momentum exposes the weakness eventually. It will, if you're not paying attention. Now you got to get ahead of it and solve those problems before it creates bigger issues.
Okay, that kind of goes into the next part is
Yeah.
as we're gaining momentum, we're gaining people. One of there's still problems with growth. And the problem is we're running out of room in certain areas. And so that requires and so when it comes to the area of finances and talking about these things, how do I go about doing it in a way that doesn't seem like, man, every time we look at this guy, he's just asking us for more?
Mm, right. Well, a lot of thoughts on that. Um, One of the things that I always tell people is you don't want to be the church, of course, that's just always asking for more. And you don't want to be the pastor that responds out of desperation. So
Mhm.
when the offering isn't going right, when the money isn't going right, oh my, I'm goodness, my goodness, I'm desperate. So now I'm going to talk about it. I'm going to share more at the, I'm going to, and so all of a sudden we start pouring more onto the situation. What I always encourage to do is to create what I call a generosity calendar. And you look at the next 12 months and you say, okay, how are we going to go on a 12-month journey to help people um, get discipled in the area of generosity and tithing, but also help them in their own personal finances, how to manage better, steward better, etc. So you look at a whole year. Imagine looking at a year. Just you and I were in an office right now. We've got a whole year on our whiteboard, January, February, March, April, all the way. And we say, and so we start proposing, I start proposing questions to you. I'm like, okay, what Sundays are you going to speak about giving? Okay, here, 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 and here, because I'm going to do it. I'm going to figure out how to do it in a series 3 times a year, 4 times a year. Okay, great. What are you going to do during the offering? Okay, and during the offering, we're always going to present a story about generosity. We're going to show them how their money impacts people. Great. Um, when are you going to honor all of your volunteers? Uh, you know what I mean? Like, how are you going to all honor all your volunteers and all that, and all your people that give on a regular basis, like a big all-in night or dream night? Maybe you do that. When are you going to, once a year, twice a year, have Dave Ramsey type curriculum come in and teach people to steward their money better? Um, when are you going to do what I call a 90-day challenge once a year, where you challenge people that have never tithed before to start tithing for 90 days? So you have to start looking at a full year and say, okay, when are we going to talk about it? How are we going to approach the subject of money? We're going to educate people through the Ramsey thing. We're going to do more teaching on it 3 times a year. We're going to do a 90-day challenge. We're going to do, you know, points throughout the offering. I'm going to do a once a quarter, I don't know, newsletter or something says, man, look, these are amazing things that happen, and your giving makes that possible. Like, you got to look at a full calendar and go, how do I even it all out? Otherwise, you're responding out of desperation. When desperation rises, standards fall. And so you want to make sure that your calendar is evened out, balanced with all the different components of generosity, so that we can continually train people on the subject of generosity. And it's more than just about the money, it's about discipleship. Because the last thing that gets saved is the person's wallet. And so we want to make sure to say, how are we going to do that? How are we going to do this throughout the entire year? Let me give you one more quick thought on that. I think it's important for you to know, you might not want to know all the people's giving. Some people like it, some people don't like that, whatever you want to do there. But if you were able to say, okay, we've got, I don't know, 70 givers in our church. I don't know, I'm just making this up, whatever. And 20 of them give $1,000 or less a year. The other 20 give between 1,000 to 3,000, and the rest give 3,000 and above, or something like that. Like, you create like 4 different tiers, TIERS. What would be cool to say is, okay, 12 months from now, let's go back and visit that tiers. And did these people move up? That's an interesting thing to me, is we just see the offering go up, but does that just mean 2 or 3 people are starting to really give? Or does that mean that we're seeing people move from category 1 to category 2, from category 2 to category 3? And a year from now, we're like, man, the generosity calendar is working. People are moving up this is amazing. It's working. Discipleship is working. How do we know if we don't know our starting point? That's one thing I highly recommend pastors to do. It doesn't matter if it's 70 givers or 7,000 givers. You put them in categories, and then you watch the next year. Okay, did 38% of these people moved up? 42% of these people moved up. And you're like, it's working. How do we know it's working? Because we're seeing them move up. So those are some of the thoughts that I have about that in
That's
regards to,
huge. That's huge.
yeah.
I like that. That's unique. I guess that's the first time I ever heard something along those lines.
Yeah, absolutely. So
Okay.
yeah, I think create the calendar, and create the tiers, and know if if it's working or not. If it's not working, then we got to change something. But
Okay.
some people are like, oh, our giving is great. Like, no, you have 6 people giving really great, but the rest of these aren't moving up. And the Bible says in Proverbs that to know the state of your flock.
Mhm.
The state of our flock is, man, we got 38% of the people ain't even close to even exercising generosity. How do we move them up? We have to know that. If we don't know that, then how do we know if we're making progress? So anyway,
Okay.
yeah, yeah,
That's huge. That's huge, man. That's
cool,
awesome.
cool.
My last question I have for you is a leadership question. because again, all this goes back to momentum and growth and these different things. So the next part is, as you grow, I've got to let go of more.
Hmm.
As you know, the more you grow, the more you got to let go. So that's the kind of like, how do I know that? How do I know when to keep my hand on something and when to let it go?
Yeah, no, that's an ongoing battle. And the larger your church gets, the more that will happen. You do not want everything to always be based on you because every church grows to the level of the pastor's personality. And then once once he reaches that maximum, 60, 80, 120, 130, the only way to go is to go to the next level. So it starts with your personality. And once you realize, man, this is as far as I can take it personally, you start to realize, like, man, I got to raise up leaders. I am a gigantic fan of constantly giving things away. Find leaders, give it away. Train them, give it away. Train them, give it away. You want to give it away. You don't give away vision. That's never for sale. You are the chief visionary. You are the main communicator. You are the main, you're the main fundraiser in that you're one developing relationships with high capacity givers and all that. Like there's certain things that you're going to be doing that no one else can do. But everything else, as much as you can give it away, hey, I don't need to lead that huddle every time prayer. I don't need to lead that follow up program. I don't need to do that, whatever it is. I don't need to do that. I'm going to train someone up and let it go. The one thing you're constantly in this motion is eliminate, delegate, automate. What can I eliminate from my schedule? What can I delegate, which is probably the big part you're at right now? And then there's some things you can automate. But the big part you're at is those first two, eliminate, delegate. You're constantly wanting to give it away. There are certain things you don't give away. There are certain things it's like, nope, that's forever you. Whether your church is 100 or 5,000, that's forever you. But there are some things, the rest of it actually, you're constantly giving away because you're raising up leaders constantly. Jesus modeled that for us. First thing he did, went out and got leaders, like as if he needed them. Uh, I don't think he needed them. I think he needed to model to us. And then okay, you guys do the work. You serve the people. You do this. You do this. You do this. And he just kept giving authority away. And that's what you're doing. Always remember, Ryan, that if you give away tasks, all you do is create followers. But if you give away authority, you create leaders.
Okay.
You don't want to you're not out to create followers. If you give away tasks, okay, you do this, you set up the chairs. Okay, thank you. Thanks for setting up the chairs. That's not leadership. They did what you said to do. You give away tasks, all you get is followers. If you give away authority, you get leaders. Authority is, okay, look, I need you. You're part of the setup team. I need you to head up the setup team, raise up 10 volunteers. You guys set it up. Like now you're giving away authority. You're not just saying, hey, set up the chairs. Okay, thanks. You did a good job. That's a task. You didn't create a leader. Your job is to create leaders. You want to constantly raise people up, give the authority away. Raise people up, give the authority away. Hang on to the things that only you can do. You're the visionary. You're the chief communicator. Like there's certain things that only you can do. Um, but everything else, you're doing everything you can to give it away. Because if you don't, this is what's going to happen. There's a major difference between lid and capacity. You will hit a
Mm.
lid and think you've hit your capacity. The lid and the capacity are different. You're going to hit your lid and go, this is as far as we can go. No, it isn't. It's as far as we can go because you're not giving stuff away. It's as far as we can go because you're not developing leaders. You got to go up. Your capacity's higher. But you got to get rid of those lids.
Awesome. I think that comes back to as well, like with the talking about the difference between followers and leaders. That's what kind of keeps people coming back to you all the time, right? If
Absolutely.
you're just giving task away, then it's what do you want me to do next? What about now? What about this? Whereas that authority level gives them that, hey, you can make some decisions, and then if it does, if you need help from there, we can talk about it.
100%. You're out to create leaders and you're giving away authority. That's how you keep moving up to that next level. Absolutely. Dude, it's so good to see you, man. I hate to
Thank
cut
you.
us off
Thank
here.
you
I'm going to
so much.
jump on another one, but man, it's always great to see you. And man, appreciate your heart. I love what God's doing in your life. You're becoming a coach. You're becoming a voice to other people. God's growing your church, and just know that we're with you on the journey, man. You're not in this thing alone. So,
Thanks so much, Chris. I appreciate it, buddy.
all right, bud. Have a good day.
You too, man.
All right, bye-bye. Hey, I hope you enjoyed today's podcast with Brian. What a great conversation it was with him. I want to remind you also as we close out to check out churchboom.org for everything that we have to offer at Church Boom. We are here to help pastors, grow pastors, develop pastors. We're here to help you. So make sure to check out churchboom.org. Check out all the resources that we have there, and we will see you next time on Fly on the Wall.